Special edition of Locked On Big 12. Josh Neighbors here. Joining us today, Jonathan Davis of Locked On Longhorns. We're going to talk about the news yesterday came out that Chris Beard was fired as University of Texas men's basketball coach. We'll get into the decision to do it now and what the future immediately and down the line holds for Texas hoops. That's all coming up.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, Josh Neighbors here, host of Locked On Big 12. Jonathan Davis is here, host of Locked On Longhorns. Make sure you guys subscribe to both channels. You guys can find them on YouTube. You can also find them both wherever you guys get your podcast. So, Jonathan, not a topic that we, are happy to talk about, really, but this process of Chris Beard, with the arrest that happened, and then kind of the process afterwards, and the way things have played out since, has come to an end. On January 5th, we're recording on January 6th. University of Texas pretty publicly put out statements, letters, all that kind of stuff, and also Freedom of Information Act helped with this as well. And they fired Chris Beard. They sent him a letter. They sent his attorney a letter. They basically said that even if these charges are dropped from the state's charges, from the stuff that was alleged by Randy True, his fiance, and it seems like they are going to get dropped. Even with that, they can still fire him, and they can fire him with cause. And they offered him the chance, very small window, to resign. Did not think he was interested in doing so. He maintains he hasn't done anything wrong. They fired him. They said they had no preference either way. They were going to do it. This, to me, was the right decision. And I think it's for multiple reasons. But to me, it was a decision they had to make. The timing's a bit odd, maybe. But they made the call. They got him fired. And now Chris Beard no longer head coach at Texas.
Yeah, I think you can question the timing. I mean, I guess it was a little bit less than a month, but I think what's more important than that is that they made the right decision, like you said. And, we're talking about, an organization that's worth a lot and has a lot of visibility. And so a lot of people said, okay, the police report has come out. You can take that information. You can fire him with cause. Let's get it done and let's move on. But, I think the university did their due diligence, although Chris Beard and his lawyers feel like the university didn't do their due diligence. I think that they did, and they made the right decision. I said an endorsement of Chris Beard as your head men's basketball coach is an endorsement of domestic violence, and it's an endorsement of the actions that took place on December 12th. And a university such as the University of Texas is too prestigious to endorse or entertain domestic violence, nor is any university, right? That's just not something that's tolerable or something that should be endorsed, period. And so, once that came out, whether Chris Beard maintains its innocence, I know that the fiance came out and tried to retract the statement a little bit, based on some of the details that were in the initial statement. But once the arrest made was on December 12th, the University of Texas had to make the decision that they ultimately made on January 5th. And that was getting rid of Chris Beard and moving on from that situation.
Yeah, and a few things on this. Number one, it's not acceptable to hit your partner, period. For us, two men speaking, it's never acceptable to hit a woman, ever. And under any really, there are some select circumstances, whatever. Jeff Goodman even said last night, loaded gun to your head, maybe, don't want to get into weird situations like that. But really under no circumstances is it okay. Second thing.
I want to clarify too. I mean, and women hitting men as well.
Both your partner hitting your partner, your spouse.
We shouldn't. It's not man, women. We shouldn't be touching each other. Period.
Yeah. I'm with you on that 100%. The other part of this I want to mention is that while she retracted her statement, that is not something that is uncommon. I'm a boxing fan right now. Jerome Tang Davis, who even fights on Saturday night, he's going through the same exact thing. And you'll see it, across a lot of different things. Dana White, we saw a video of him and his wife getting an altercation, and they had statements ready to go and whatnot. And, people have said, oh, it's between them. Sure, whatever. But also we have to talk about you being a public face, right? Even if you want to do the whole it's between them, which I don't believe it's between them thing, but you are a public face of something. And this is not just coming from me, but Chip Brown mentioned this yesterday, and Jeff Goodman hinted at as well. People at Texas Tech were aware of there not maybe this happening before, but there was some hesitations about maybe some stuff happening in that relationship and maybe some red flags that happened before. Texas went and hired him, and I am sure they were aware of whatever's going on. I'm not saying they never should have hired him. I'm just saying there is an awareness to maybe some actions Chris Beard has taken, or the volatility rather of that relationship, to put it in the way that I've heard it, the volatility of it. The one thing Texas could not risk was, what if you brought him back, and what if something like this happened again? that would be one of the biggest nightmares. I think in terms of like handling of a coach in the history of sport, you having a coach who you knew something might be wrong. And even though legally everything might get cleared up, once again, like it sounds like the charges are going to be dropped because of the way Randy True has approached this. But what if something like this happened again? You would be saying that, look, you enabled it. You made it okay. You allowed the guy to keep his job and say, you know what? Things happened a certain way that we found acceptable and we kept him on. That's, it's not just about this is one of the ways that we tolerate it, right? By letting somebody keep their job as the face of something as public as University of Texas men's basketball, who have a new sparkling arena, who are one of the top 3 teams in the country earlier on in the year, right? Who play in the best conference in America. You cannot keep somebody on board. That's perpetuating it. That's saying, well, we got to find the right, because of the way it played out legally, we can keep them on board. And that's why we do it. There you've put the winning above what really matters. And if you think there's any shadow of a doubt that this might have happened, or, read the arrest details, that's just unsavory enough as it is, you should make this call. Put in your due diligence, sure. And I feel like they did, but this was the call that had to be made, considering all of those factors.
Absolutely. And you make a good point about, it potentially happening again or enabling that behavior. And I think too often, not just in college sports and sports period, we see these cases where, a coach has done something horrific, but eventually, time moves on and it's like, okay, we want to win, right? And we're going to prioritize winning over that. We saw when Auburn hired Hugh Freeze, there's a big, it's Hugh Freeze Day on Twitter, right? And everybody moves on. And now he's just the head coach at Auburn, right? And so, I think there's a similar situation here, not at the University of Texas, but eventually somebody will look at Chris Beard's track record and say, okay, we want to win, and we've seen his production at the college level. And so, yeah, you made a good point. And you also made a good point about, victims, a lot, kind of taking back their stances or walking stuff back because, she was Chris Beard's fiance, but she wasn't necessarily a prominent figure or a national figure to the level that, Chris Beard was. But when you make that phone call and this becomes public, this becomes your lifestyle. You can't even go to the grocery store or wherever without people saying, oh, that's Chris Beard's fiance. This happened. Their drama's all on Front Street, right? And so if they're trying to move forward as a couple and move past this, then she's trying to do, what she's trying to do now to make sure that, they're best apt to do that. But, like you said, reading the police report, that was enough information right there for the University of Texas to fire him with cause, at least, whether you get into, he has to have his day in court or he's innocent or, he has proof or whatever.
Right.
And, you talked about the history at Texas Tech, and I can't speak on that. I wasn't there. I'm not sure.
Neither was I. I'm just saying this is what other people, Chip Brown, when Chip Brown mentioned something, we take Chip Brown.
But it's definitely something that has been circulated. I heard something with her and a volleyball team in Lubbock. Like there's definitely something that's been circulated. When I look at the situation, like I said, I wasn't there that night on December 12th. But to me, for Chris Beard to say that he had a recording, whether he wants to publish it or not, it's up to him. I don't know why he wouldn't publish it if he felt like it would help him. But if for him to even be prepared to record tells me that this is not something that he was shocked by, right? Like this is a situation that he was ready for. If he was recording the altercation, this feels like something that had happened before. And so you make a good point that if you endorse this behavior, if you bring him back to the University of Texas, not only do you stain your reputation as a university, but you risk this situation getting even worse if it happens again. And now the finger is pointed at you because you say you enabled this behavior by bringing him back and allowing him to be the face of your men's basketball program.
And this decision, by all accounts, went above Chris Del Conte's head. This was not ultimately his choice. This was the power brokers at Texas, and I'm sure CDC was involved, but they made this call on doing this. And also, too, how are the players supposed to trust him again? If you bring him back mid-season, like after that, the players have moved on in the way, right? In a certain sense, and this kind of gives them a bit of closure. Maybe not all the closure they need, but a bit of closure. Like Rodney Terry is now your coach. That is the way it's going to be the rest of the year. But you bring him back, like as a fan, how do you feel? As a player, how do you feel? As somebody who is on that staff, how do you feel? Somebody, who covers a league, like it covers a team, like how do you feel? You just feel really odd. And the one thing I think you're right. Chris Beard's not done coaching college basketball. So whatever is currently going on in his life, whether he admits to it or not, I hope things take a more positive turn. He's able to turn. Because here's the thing, Jonathan, I think we're having a conversation in 5 to 10 years about should Chris Beard be back, allowed back into major Division I basketball? Because that guy wins everywhere he goes. He wins everywhere he goes. And if he gets another shot, and we'll see what happens, people get second chances in this world. I'm not the guy who's, if I was an AD, would be the one handing them out, right? It's not really what I would do, but I don't run the programs. I think we'll see him back. So I think that's something that we have a lot of these conversations about, like Rick Pitino coming back, right? Hugh Freeze coming back. DJ Durkin is, defensive coordinator right now. And on the opposite side of the ball for A&M, it's now going to be Bobby Petrino who is back, right? So, I mean, this stuff happens, like kind of the time heals all wounds in the public side, but, you hope that there is some maturation from him as a person. And Texas is alleging too here. I mean, they're pretty emphatic about this, Jonathan, that he does not understand what he did wrong. He feels like, it seems like he thinks that there was an overreaction and he was attacked and he's the one that deserves the next shot. And doesn't feel like, he's culpable in this situation. So, and Texas seems once again, very emphatic. How much is public? I don't know, but the university was pretty clear on that front, I thought. And that was the thing out of all of this that stood out to me the most.
And that's why I say that, we need to focus more on them making the right decision than the timing, right? Because it's like, it takes time to figure out all the details and make the decision. And, you're dealing with Chris Beard and you wanted to, turn every stone to make sure that you were making the right decision in this regard. And yes, the University of Texas said that this is something that we can't stand for. Like I said, you just can't endorse this, right? Regardless of, what Chris Beard says or how he feels, the truth of the matter is, right, this is not, conjecture. This is fact. He was arrested on December 12th for felony domestic violence charges, including strangulation, right? And that's just not something that the University of Texas can stand for. And like you said, they gave him the window to resign. He clearly pushed back on that and said that he didn't do anything wrong. They came out, in the statement and said that University of Texas is, making this decision based on Twitter feeds and all of that. Like, I mean, it's really just kind of disgusting stuff from somebody I once respected in Chris Beard, because not only have you been accused of doing this, but it's like no remorse is shown at all. It's like you're almost trying to use the internet and you're trying to turn yourself into the victim here, right? Like you've been done wrong by the University of Texas. They didn't give you a fair chance to get your job back and, anything. And then, like I said, from the jump, him and his representatives have been talking about this recording they have that'll prove that not that he didn't do what's been alleged, but that he did it in self-defense. But if you're not willing to produce that, then that's null and void to me. So yeah, this whole Chris Beard trying to flip it and turn it into he's the victim and he didn't get a fair shot and all of this, it's just really, to me, it's in one ear and out the other. The University of Texas made the right decision to move on from him. Like I said, I believe he'll get another coaching job down the future. And so, like you said, in the meantime, I hope that he's doing the work to, come out from this on the other side better. But from what I've heard thus far, him trying to make himself a victim and, not willing to resign and, not willing to, I guess, let go of his innocence when it's clear that, regardless of the reason that he did it, he did something very bad and he did something, that's uncalled for and something that should never be tolerated, especially by the University of Texas. So I hope that, everybody involved, his daughters, the family, the friends, everybody involved with the situation can get better and move forward from it. And I hope that, he eventually, maybe not right now, maybe he's still emotional, maybe things are happening, but eventually he can take accountability, because that's the first step to becoming better as a person. And if he does get another coaching job, like you said, you won't be the AD to hand it out. I won't be the AD to hand it out. We can't control that, but he needs to be in the best position to make sure that if he does get another opportunity, that he won't let it falter the way that he did with his dream job at the University of Texas.
And so that's where we get to the team itself, right? These guys this year, the job for Rodney Terry, like this isn't just, you're not just picking up a team that's really good. Like I know they're good, but there is a whole lot on this group that you have to keep together, because there's a lot of older guys. There's some younger guys. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of ability. And he's going to have to manage those personalities. And we saw the other night, their offense has been better since Beard has been gone. Their defense has not been as good, right? But this is still a team that's ranked number 6 nationally. And so before we talk about who's the long-term replacement and all of those things, the first thing I want to do is ask you, what does Rodney Terry, number 1, have to do to stabilize, or do you think he already has? I think this kind of adds a new wave of unstabilization to it with the firing being official now. What does he have to do this season to keep the job? because Texas feels like, I know they feel like this, they might have their pick of the litter of a lot of really good coaches, or they're going to at least throw the kitchen sink at a lot of really good coaches. So let's start there and be fair to Rodney Terry. What does he need to do to keep the Texas Longhorns basketball job this season?
Well, that's tough. And I think the odds are going to be stacked against them. Like you said, it's the University of Texas. It's one of the biggest brands in the world. And they feel like they can have their pick of the litter as coach, especially when you looked at what Chris Beard was able to do in less than 2 seasons, getting this team all the way to the number 2 team in the country with home wins against Creighton and Gonzaga, 2 top 10 teams at the time of his dismissal. So I think for Rodney Terry, who's come in and has been the interim head coach, and like you said, they haven't looked like the same basketball team, maybe haven't had the same attention to detail, toughness, and grit that we're used to seeing from a Chris Beard team. They're still 5-1 since his departure, and 5-1 is 5-1 regardless of competition. Although 116 points in 40 minutes to Kansas State is not ideal. I don't care how hot they were, right? So I think for Rodney Terry to keep this job at the University of Texas, when they're going to be making calls to people like Scott Drew and Jay Wright and some of the best coaches to have ever graced college basketball, I think Rodney Terry has to. I think Elite 8 would be the floor for him to keep his job. I think, Sweet 16, he's out of there, right? I think Elite 8 and,
right.
Maybe it came down really close to them getting the Final Four and you say, okay, this team is really responding to Rodney Terry. Maybe if A.J. Johnson and Ron Holland, 2 5-stars in the 2023 class, maybe if they reaffirm their commitment and say, I'm committed to Rodney Terry, I love what he's doing at the University of Texas, then maybe the school can look at it and say, okay, the future is buying into Rodney Terry, so we should buy into Rodney Terry as well. But I think from a production on the court standpoint, I think the floor would be Elite 8. I think anything less than Elite 8, and he's definitely fired, and they're looking for the next big splash at the coaching position.
I agree. And even with an Elite 8, like you're thinking, the thought from CDC and company might be, all right, well, we can do better if we have a better coach.
Yeah, if this is an Elite 8 team, we're like Jay Wright away from a national championship.
Right.
There you go, exactly.
And
his own success might work against him. That's
I know, right? It's exactly. It's like, well, we could have done a little bit better. I'm trying to think about, there have been a ton of names out there. All right. And I'm kind of volleying back. And I think Final Four is what he has to do to keep a job. I legitimately think Final Four, just because this is that kind of team. Like this basketball team this year has that kind of talent, has that kind of ability. Marcus Card, Tyrese Hunter, Timmy Allen, Serge Jabari Rice, like all these guys, and even Bishop and Disu. They've got it, Brock Cunningham, kind of your workhorse. Like they've got all of these guys who are just, names that we know. They're an old team. That is an old team. They can score in the perimeter, they can score the post a little bit too. They can get up and down. The names that I've heard some big names. What are the 3 that you feel like this makes sense? I can see this happening because, I know people talking about Musselman. I really don't see that happening. I think for basketball, Arkansas is sure it's a football place, and I know it's still in very much Cowboys country, as you know. Jerry Jones went there, all that kind of stuff. But they love their basketball, and he is beloved at Arkansas. I don't see that. To me, Jay Wright would make a lot of sense because he's not coaching, but I think he left coaching for some reason. So because he's not occupied, I'd ask him. Jerome Tang, because I don't think Scott Drew is going to leave Baylor. And I think Scott Drew is staying at Baylor. It feels like it's kind of guy that he is, especially his values. He's a very, very strong Christian guy. I feel like it's just that's a match made in heaven for him. Jerome Tang, if he has a great year at K-State, why wouldn't you call him? A guy who knows the state of Texas really, really well. And if you can win in the Big 12, I know it's only 1 year, but come on, man. If you can win in the Big 12, you got to respect that. And then the third guy, I'm kind of, I heard somebody mention John Calipari. It's I'm not even sure you want to get John Calipari right now. I'm not even sure that's the right way to do it. Maybe one of the guys of I would hate to see it, Dennis Gates at Missouri. I know that's been brought up. Somebody else who's done a good job in the Power 5 maybe. But I would say right now, Jerome Tang is probably up there number 1, and Jay Wright's unoccupied. Why not give him a call?
Yeah, you mentioned some of them, but you talked about it. Jay Wright, definitely. I think he has to be at the top of your list, especially because he's not at another school. I think Baylor,
right.
Like you said, Scott Drew, somebody told me you have to make him say no to you, right? And I do think you have to
right.
make that call, but I don't see him leaving Baylor. I actually like the John Calipari just because I know that Texas is going to be looking for a splash. And you could say what you want about Calipari. Sure. You could say that he hasn't achieved with the level of talent that he's had. But like we look at it in college football, like there's only a few coaches that have made it to the pinnacle and won a national championship.
Sure.
And Calipari is still one of those coaches. He's still somebody that can go in any living room and bring in any player in the country to Austin, Texas, potentially, if he was brought in. So I think that the way things are looking at Kentucky right now, maybe it's run its course and, Texas can make that call and he can revive his career a little bit at the 48 because I'm not sure. But another name is currently, one of the biggest and best coaches in the state of Texas in college basketball right now. I think you have to make the call to Kelvin Sampson down at U of H, and I know that he's, done a lot of really good things. And, that program right now is kind of on par with the University of Texas, but Texas still is the flagship school in the state, and that means something, right? And so, like you said, you just have to make him say no. I'm not saying that he'll jump, and leave U of H, and I'm not saying that he should. I think you're right. You have to make that. Just the University of Texas, you have to make a
new arena.
Splash. Yeah. Kelvin Sampson would be a splash. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. Maybe I'm being too short-sighted with like these guys are happy, and I think the one thing Kelvin's a little bit older, right? And you don't want to mess with Happy, but I mean, if you call Muss,
Chris Beard was happy.
Right. Chris Beard is very happy at Tech. Yeah, that's a good point. If you make the offer to Muss, if you make the offer to Scott Drew, if you make the offer, to those guys, Kelvin Sampson, right? I mean, maybe if you keep offering enough of those guys like that, eventually somebody will not say no to you if you make it the gotta say no type offer. So maybe I'm wrong on that front, but I think Scott Drew or Jay Wright, like if you could pull that one off, is good. But once again, Rodney Terry deserves his shot because what he's being asked to do right now is extremely challenging.
Yeah.
So, and look, I'm not sure it's going to work out. Like this is an unfair spot for him to be in.
Yeah, you wake up on December 12th and you're the head men's basketball coach at the University of Texas.
Right.
Like you went to sleep as an assistant. You woke up as the head basketball coach for the remainder of the season, right? And
under like ridiculous circumstances too.
Yeah, and then for like 3.5 weeks, like you're in kind of flux. You don't know if you're the interim. You don't know if he's going to be brought back. Like you don't know how to approach the team, right? And you have to step in immediately to all of these coaches that, they committed to Rodney Terry too, but they committed to Chris Beard. Right. Like they trusted Chris Beard. They came to the University of Texas to play for Chris Beard. Timmy Allen and Marcus Carr came back when most people didn't think they would because they believed in Chris Beard. And so now you have to take over this team. And, like I said, it'd be different if he was taking over a 2-11, 2-12 team. And it's like, oh, okay, well, just kind of get them to the end and then we'll bring in another coach. You have to step into a team that has national championship aspirations, and Chris Beard or not, you still have to lead a team that expects to win the national championship in Rodney Terry. So yeah, definitely I give that brother all the kudos, and I respect him a lot because I don't envy the position that he's in right now, and it's very tough, but like I said, this is a team with national championship aspirations, and that didn't change whether Chris Beard was fired or not. And so Rodney Terry is now the captain of that ship, and he has to be one of the reasons that they get to the national championship or make a deep run in the tournament.
All right, you and I have to talk again here coming up pretty soon. We haven't finished all of our season in reviews, so you and I will be talking Texas football here pretty soon. I'm sure you have been still. So where can people find you and your work and all of its variety covering the Longhorns?
Yes, John Zoe Ball, like Lonzo Ball for the personal Twitter, Locked On Horns for the Locked On Longhorns Twitter, Locked On Longhorns on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Hook 'em.
Awesome. Jonathan Davis, appreciate you so much.